You know that feeling when you reach into a coat pocket and pull out something that makes your stomach drop. Not because it's dangerous, not because it's disgusting, but because it's impossible? That is exactly what happened to me at 3 in the morning, in the lowest level of a research station sitting on top of the most isolated continent on Earth. And when I tell you what was written on that piece of paper, I need you to understand, I had never met the person who wrote it. I had never spoken to them. I had never even heard their name before that night. And yet, somehow, they knew exactly what I was going to do, exactly where I was going to be, and exactly what I was going to find. Stay with me, because this story doesn't end where you think it ends. My name doesn't matter for this story. What matters is that I am a night shift station support assistant at one of the most remote British Antarctic survey stations on the continent. And before you picture something glamorous, before you imagine heated corridors filled with scientists in white coats making groundbreaking discoveries, let me tell you what the job actually looks like at 3 in the morning when the wind outside is screaming at 100 kilometers an hour and the temperature has dropped to negative 47 degrees Celsius. It looks like a laundry room. A small, humming, fluorescent-lit laundry room that smells like industrial detergent and old rubber boots. And something underneath all of that, something I can never quite identify, something that smells like the cold itself has found a way inside the walls. My job as station support assistant means I keep the station functioning. While the scientists sleep, while the researchers dream about their data, while the engineers rest before their morning shifts, I am the one walking the corridors. I am checking the heating systems. I am monitoring the fuel lines. I am making sure the ventilation doesn't freeze, that the water pipes don't burst, that the emergency generators are ready. And yes, I am doing the laundry. It sounds mundane. It sounds so unbearably ordinary that you might wonder how this becomes a horror story. But that is the thing about working a night shift in Antarctica that nobody warns you about before you sign the contract. Nobody pulls you aside and says, the isolation doesn't get to you immediately. It creeps. It moves slowly, like the ice outside moves slowly, grinding and shifting beneath tons of pressure in ways you cannot see and cannot hear until the moment something cracks. The station operates on a winter-over schedule. That means a skeleton crew of around 15 people maintaining the facility through the Antarctic winter when the sun does not rise for months. Let me say that again so it lands properly. The sun does not rise. For months, you wake up in darkness. You eat in darkness. You work in darkness. You go to sleep in darkness. And outside those walls, beyond the reinforced windows and the insulated corridors, there is nothing. No towns, no roads, no other human beings for over 1,000 kilometers in any direction. The nearest hospital is on another continent. The nearest grocery store is on another continent. If something goes wrong, and I mean anything, a medical emergency, a structural failure, a fire, help is not coming quickly. Help might not come at all until the weather allows it. That is the psychological weight you carry every single night shift. That is the invisible heaviness that sits on your chest while you're folding thermal base layers at 3 in the morning and listening to the wind try to tear the station apart. Now let me tell you about the rules. Every Antarctic station has them. Some are practical, some are safety protocols, but some of them are the kind of rules that nobody explains, that nobody gives you a reason for, that you just find printed on a laminated sheet in your orientation packet and you are expected to follow without question. Rule 1. Never go outside alone after midnight. The official reason is weather safety. Wind conditions can change in under 3 minutes, and a person caught outside in a whiteout without a buddy is statistically unlikely to find their way back. That is the official reason. But there is something about the way the senior staff deliver that rule. Something about the way they make eye contact with you when they say it, just a fraction of a second longer than feels comfortable. That makes you feel like the weather is not entirely the reason. Rule 2. If you hear knocking on the outer door during your night shift, log it, and do not open the door until you have confirmed the source over the internal radio with at least one other crew member. Again, official reason, safety, protocol, sensible. But I want you to think about what that rule is actually acknowledging. It is acknowledging that something knocks on the outer door during the night. It is acknowledging that this happens regularly enough that it needed to become a rule. Rule 3. The laundry room must be cleared and locked by 5 a.m. without exception. No explanation given. When I asked during orientation, the senior assistant who was showing me the ropes, a quiet, methodical man named Davies who had wintered over 3 times. He just looked at me and said, "You'll understand by February." He said it with a kind of tired certainty that made me feel like understanding was not going to be a pleasant experience. Rule 4. Any personal items found in clothing during laundering must be documented in the found items log before being returned or discarded. Full description. Time found. Location found. Condition of item. This one seemed overly bureaucratic to me at first. A piece of paper, a hair tie, a forgotten coin. These things needed to be formally logged? But Davies told me, without elaborating, that the log mattered. That the log had mattered before. He said it like that. Had mattered before. Past tense. As though something had happened that made that log significant in a way he wasn't going to explain to a first-season winter over. So I follow the rules. Every night, I walk my rounds, I check my systems, I fold my thermal layers, and I log my found items. And for the first 3 months of my winter over rotation, the most unusual thing I find in any pocket is a forgotten piece of chewing gum and a folded weather report from 6 weeks prior that someone had apparently been carrying around without realizing. And then comes the night I'm telling you about. It is 3 a.m. The date, and this matters, so hold on to it, is the 17th of June. I have been at the station for 14 weeks. I know every sound this building makes. I know the specific pitch of the ventilation fan in Corridor B that is slightly off-key. I know the way the heating pipes in the eastern wing click 3 times in rapid succession at approximately 2:45 every morning as the temperature differential causes the metal to contract. I know this station the way you know the inside of a space you've been trapped in. Intimately, involuntarily, every imperfection memorized. I am sorting a load of outerwear that has come in from the equipment room. Cold weather gear that gets cycled through a cleaning rotation every 2 weeks because the station protocols require it. Heavy canvas outer shells, insulated gloves, neck gaiters, the kind of gear that, when you're handling it, carries the cold inside the fabric like a memory. Even freshly washed, these things feel like they remember the outside. I am working through the pile methodically. Check every pocket before loading. Station rules. Found items log. Document everything. Most pockets are empty. A few have the usual detritus, a cable tie, a bit of duct tape wrapped around a finger, the cap of a marker pen. I log them. I keep moving. And then I reach a jacket near the bottom of the pile. Dark navy blue. Standard issue. The label inside the collar has a name tag, but the name tag is blank. The ink has faded completely, which happens sometimes with these older garments. The thermal cycling bleaches them out over time. I check the outer pockets. Empty. I check the inner breast pocket. Empty. I reach into the lower left cargo pocket, which is deep and boxy and has a zip closure. The zip is closed. That is the first thing that strikes me as strange. These cargo pockets almost never get zipped. There's rarely anything important enough to zip them shut, and in the cold, operating a small zipper with gloves on is an unnecessary friction most people avoid. But this one is closed. Deliberately closed. I pull the zip open. I reach inside, and I feel paper. Folded paper. The kind that has been folded carefully, precisely, The crease is sharp and intentional. I pull it out. It is a piece of standard A4 paper, white, folded into quarters. It is not yellowed. It is not deteriorated. It looks recent. It feels recent. I unfold it, and I read what is written on it. And I need you to understand the specific sequence of words on that paper before I describe what happened next, because this sequence matters. It matters in a way that took me several minutes standing in that laundry room under those fluorescent lights to fully process. Written in black ink, in handwriting I do not recognize, in capital letters that are neat and unhurried, is the following. And I am going to read this to you exactly as it appeared. June 17th, 3 a.m. Laundry room. Left cargo pocket. Navy jacket. Bottom of the pile. You will check the found items log after you read this. Check the entry from March 4th. It will tell you what to do next. I stand there. The fluorescent light hums. The ventilation fan makes its slightly off-key whirring sound. Outside, the wind hits the station wall, and the whole structure makes that low, resonant groan it makes when the gusts are over 60 kilometers an hour. I read the paper again. June 17th, 3 a.m. Laundry room. Left cargo pocket. Navy jacket. Bottom of the pile. Today is June 17th. It is 3 a.m. I am in the laundry room. I just pulled this from the left cargo pocket of a Navy jacket that was at the bottom of the pile. My first thought is that someone is playing a prank. A colleague with a dark sense of humor who planted this jacket, who knew my schedule, who thought it would be funny to rattle the new night shift support assistant. Antarctica does this to people. The isolation breeds strange creativity. Pranks happen. Dark humor is a coping mechanism for the endless dark. But then I think about the second part of the message. Check the found items log. March 4th. That log is kept in a binder on the shelf beside the laundry room door. It is not something a prankster would think to reference. Most people on station don't even know the log exists. It's a bureaucratic document that I maintain, that Davies told me to maintain, that nobody else has any reason to interact with. I walk to the shelf. I open the binder. My hands are steady. I am telling myself this is a prank. I am telling myself this is someone being creative with their isolation-fueled boredom. I flip back through the pages to March 4th. That was 11 weeks ago, before I arrived. The station was operating with the previous winter-over crew at that point. I was still in my final briefings in Cambridge at that point. I find the March 4th entry, and there is only one item logged for that entire day, written in different handwriting. Not the handwriting from the paper in the pocket, but a different hand. The handwriting of whoever maintained the log before I arrived is the following entry. March 4th, 2:47 a.m. Found item. One folded piece of paper, A4, white, found in left cargo pocket, Navy outer shell jacket, batch 6 laundry cycle. Paper contains written message. Message reads, ITIS, June 17th. The person reading this will find this note tonight. Tell them, do not check the Eastern Corridor cameras between 3 and 4 a.m. Tell them, whatever they hear near the outer door, do not log it. Tell them, they are already in it. The jacket goes back in the pile. I close the binder. I open it again. I reread the March 4th entry. The jacket, this jacket, the one I just pulled from the bottom of tonight's pile. Someone found a note in it on March 4th, 3.5 months ago, before I arrived. A note that described tonight. A note that knew I would find this jacket tonight, at this time, in this room. And that first note, the one found in March, told the previous person to leave a message for me, which they did, inside the found items log, which I just read. And the note found in March contained instructions for me. Do not check the Eastern Corridor cameras between 3 and 4 a.m. Whatever you hear near the outer door, do not log it. You are already in it. The jacket goes back in the pile. I look at the jacket in my hand. The Eastern Corridor cameras. We have a monitoring station at the support desk, a bank of small screens showing feeds from cameras positioned at key points around the station interior and exterior. The Eastern Corridor camera covers the stretch of hallway that runs from the equipment room to the outer airlock. It is a standard interior corridor, fluorescent lit, concrete floor, equipment lockers on one side. I have walked that corridor 100 times. There is nothing notable about it. But I am being told, through a chain of notes that spans more than 3 months, that I should not look at that camera feed between 3 and 4 a.m. I check my watch. It is 3:14 a.m. Here is what I know about human psychology in the dark. When you are told not to look at something, the compulsion to look at it becomes almost physical. It becomes an itch inside your skull. Your eyes start moving toward it before your brain has finished processing the instruction to stop. It is the oldest reflex we have, the thing that makes us turn toward the sound, the movement, the forbidden direction. It kept us alive as a species. It also, in certain moments, puts us in danger. I do not check the Eastern Corridor cameras. I tell myself I am following the instruction because it is rational to follow it. The note has demonstrated, through its impossible specificity, that whoever wrote it had information I cannot explain. Following their other instructions, therefore, seems like the prudent response. That is what I tell myself. The truth, the thing I do not say out loud even to myself at that moment, is that I am terrified to check those cameras. Because some part of me already knows that if I look at that screen, if I pull up the Eastern Corridor feed and see what is there between 3 and 4 in the morning, whatever it is, I will not be able to unknow it. And in a place as remote and as sealed as this station, with nowhere to go and months still remaining in my rotation, not knowing might be the only thing keeping me functional. I put the jacket aside. I start loading the washing machines. I work mechanically, deliberately, keeping my eyes away from the monitoring desk in the corner of the room. At 3:28 a.m., I hear the knock. Not the polite knock of a colleague who has gotten up for a glass of water and decided to check on the night shift. Not the structured knock of a person following protocol. This is 3 impacts on the outer door. The heavy insulated steel door at the far end of the airlock corridor. The door that separates the pressurized interior of the station from the Antarctic night. And they are slow and deliberate and evenly spaced. Like someone being very careful not to rush. The rule says, log it, then confirm over internal radio before opening. The note says, do not log it. I stand in the laundry room with a thermal jacket in my hands, and I listen to the silence that follows the 3 knocks, a silence that is somehow louder than the knocking was. I do not log it. I do not open the outer door. I do not call it in on the internal radio, because calling it in means logging it, and the note said do not log it, and the note has been right about everything else. I stand there. The washing machines begin their cycle. The water fills and churns. The wind outside shifts pitch slightly, moving from a low groan to something that is almost a sustained note, like a single sustained chord played on an instrument made entirely of ice. And then the knocking stops. At 3:59 a.m., 1 minute before 4, I check my watch. And I realize that I have spent the last 30 minutes processing information in a particular way. In the way that you process information when part of your brain is managing something it cannot rationalize, while the other part keeps performing the ordinary tasks because the ordinary tasks are the only anchor you have. I have loaded 4 washing machine cycles. I have sorted 2 dryer loads. I have done this with my back to the monitoring desk. I have not checked the Eastern Corridor cameras. The clock hits 4 a.m. I turn around and look at the monitoring desk. I pull up the Eastern Corridor feed. The corridor is empty. Fluorescent light. Concrete floor. Equipment lockers. Nothing unusual. Nothing there. But on the floor of the corridor, directly in the center of the frame, is something that was not there when I last checked the cameras at the start of my shift. A folded piece of white A4 paper. I stare at the screen for a very long time. Then I get up. I walk to the eastern corridor. I walk the length of it. I pick up the paper. I unfold it. It says, "Good. Now put the jacket back in the pile. See you next June." I put the jacket back in the pile. I finish my shift. I write up a full found items log entry. Both items, the pocket note, and this one. I write everything. Time, location, exact wording. I never tell anyone at the station what happened that night. Not because I am afraid they won't believe me, but because in the found items log from March, the previous person logged the note they found, described it in full detail, and then apparently put the jacket back in the pile. They followed the instructions. They did what the note said. And in their log entry, after the description of the note, they wrote a single additional line in small letters at the bottom. A line I hadn't noticed when I first read it because it was written so small, so quietly, as if they weren't sure they should write it at all. It says, "I checked the Eastern Corridor cameras." That is the last entry that person ever made in the log. They finished their winter over and left the station at the end of the season. They did not return for a second rotation, which is unusual for experienced support staff. I asked Davies about them once, casually, framing it as curiosity about my predecessors. Davies was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "They were fine. They just said they'd seen enough." I never asked what enough looked like. The jacket is still in the rotation cycle. I check for it every 2 weeks when the batch comes through. And every time I pull it from the pile and check that left cargo pocket and find it empty, some part of me, some quiet, very specific part of me, releases a breath I didn't know I was holding. But I know that next June 17th, that pocket will not be empty. And I have already decided that when that night comes, I will follow the rules. All of them, including the one that tells me not to look at the cameras. Because I have thought about what the previous person wrote. Those 4 small words at the bottom of their log entry. And I have thought about what they must have seen on that screen during those 59 minutes between 3 and 4 a.m. to make them write nothing else, to make them walk away from the station and never come back. And I have decided that some things in the dark deserve to stay there. Not because they're not real, but because they are. That is the rule nobody puts on the laminated sheet in your orientation packet. But it is the most important rule of all. Keep doing the laundry. Watch the time. And when something tells you, through channels you cannot explain, through messages that travel backward and forward through time in jacket pockets, when something tells you not to look, don't look. Story number 2. I need you to listen to me very carefully right now, because what I am about to tell you starts with a server error and ends with the reason I will never work a night shift alone again. I am a trained IT engineer. I have been fixing servers for 9 years. I understand hardware failure. I understand data corruption. I understand every rational, technical explanation for why a machine behaves unexpectedly. And I am telling you, with 9 years of training and everything I know about how these systems work, that what I watched appear on that screen at 2 in the morning had no rational explanation. None. And the worst part is not what it showed me. The worst part is what it knew. My role at Halley Research Station is wintering IT engineer. If you are not familiar with Halley, it is one of the most extreme outposts on the planet. A British Antarctic survey station built on a floating ice shelf in the Weddell Sea. The station is designed on ski legs so that it can be raised as the ice surface rises around it from accumulating snowfall. It is a remarkable piece of engineering. It is also one of the loneliest places on Earth during the winter over season, when the ice shelf is inaccessible by aircraft and the crew of around 14 people becomes the entirety of your world for months at a time. I manage all of the station's IT infrastructure, the servers that store research data, the network systems, The communication equipment that connects us to the outside world. Connections that can be degraded or completely lost during the winter months, depending on satellite positioning and weather conditions. If those systems fail, I fix them, day or night. Usually night, because that is when I am awake and the systems seem to choose their worst behavior for the hours when everyone else is sleeping. Let me tell you about the IT rules at this station. Because like every department, there are official rules, and then there are the other rules. The ones passed down between engineers at handover. The ones nobody writes in the manual because the manual would sound insane if you tried to explain them. Official rule. All server maintenance requiring physical access to the server room must be logged with the start time and end time in the maintenance register. Reason given, operational accountability. If a system goes down during maintenance, you need a time-stamped record of exactly what was touched and when. The other rule, told to me by the previous IT engineer at handover, standing in the server room with his jacket already half on because he was leaving that same afternoon and couldn't quite meet my eyes while he said it. If the main diagnostic terminal ever shows you something that isn't a system process, something that looks like output from a program you didn't run, log out immediately. Don't read it. Don't interact with it. Log out. Restart the terminal and write it up as a display anomaly. Don't investigate it yourself. I asked him how often that happened. He said, "It happened to me once." I asked what he saw. He picked up his bag and said, "Good luck with the winter." And that was that. The other rule. The one nobody says out loud, but that you figure out during your first few weeks on night shift. The server room is cold. All server rooms are cold. Temperature control is essential for hardware longevity. But the server room at Halley is cold in a way that doesn't entirely track with the temperature data the climate control system reports. The logs might say it's a stable 8 degrees Celsius in there. But when you walk in at 2 in the morning, there are moments, specific moments, not all the time, just sometimes, when the cold hits you differently. Not the ambient chill of a climate-controlled room. Something that feels like it is moving, like a draft from a direction that has no vent. Nobody talks about it, but every IT engineer who has wintered over here knows what I am describing. You can see it on their faces when the topic gets near it. This micro-expression of recognition that vanishes almost immediately because acknowledging it out loud would require explaining it, and explaining it isn't something anyone wants to do. So, now you know the setting. Now you know the rules. Let me tell you about the night. It is 2 a.m. on the 14th of August. The station has been in winter-over condition for 3 months. Outside, the temperature is somewhere around -50 Celsius with wind chill. The sun has not risen in 63 days. I am used to that now. Used to it in the way you get used to a chronic discomfort, the way it becomes the background texture of your existence rather than an active sensation. I am in the server room because Server Unit 3 threw an alert at 1:47 a.m. The alert is a RAID degradation warning. One of the mirrored drives in the array is reporting red errors, which means it's starting to fail, which means I need to run a diagnostic and most likely schedule a drive replacement before the array loses redundancy entirely. Standard procedure. I have done this kind of job dozens of times. I am sitting at the main diagnostic terminal. The terminal is a workstation built into the wall, a large monitor with a full keyboard and interface that allows me to access all server systems locally. It is faster and more reliable than the network-based management interface, and for physical hardware work, local access is always preferred. I run the diagnostic on Unit 3. It begins its scan. These scans take between 20 and 40 minutes, depending on drive capacity and error density. I settle in. I make a log entry with my start time. I have a thermos of coffee. The overhead lights in the server room are at 50%. There's a switch for full brightness, but full brightness at 2 in the morning in a small cold room feels aggressive in a way I've never fully adjusted to. At 2:30, with the diagnostic still running, the terminal does something. The diagnostic output is scrolling in one window in the lower half of the screen. Standard text, status updates, error codes, drive sector readings. It looks like what it always looks like. But in the upper half of the screen, in a window I did not open, text begins to appear. It is not a system process. It is not a background service or a scheduled task or a log file that has been accidentally foregrounded. I am looking at what appears to be a text output window, the kind generated by a script or a command line process, and it is filling with characters in real time, as though something is typing into it. The first thing that appears is a date and timestamp, and the date is not today's date. The date is not any recent date. The date is the date of my birth. I know my own birthday, and I am looking at it on a server terminal at 2:30 in the morning in Antarctica, rendered in the Monospace system font that the diagnostic interface uses, appearing in a window I did not open. My brain immediately goes to explanations. A prank, a script someone else loaded, a configuration file with someone's data, a corrupted log file being displayed incorrectly. My hands are steady. I am an engineer. Engineers don't panic at unexplained outputs. Engineers investigate. The text continues. After the date of my birth, the following appears, line by line, with the deliberate pace of something being composed rather than retrieved. The city I was born in. Correct. The hospital. Correct. A specific NHS hospital in the north of England that I have not mentioned to anyone at this station. I don't discuss my early life with colleagues. I am a private person. Nobody here knows that detail. The time of my birth. Down to the minute. Correct. I know this because it's on the copy of my birth certificate that I have seen. 23 minutes past 11 in the morning. And then, after a pause, 3 full seconds where nothing new appears, and I am leaning forward in my chair with my coffee forgotten in my hand. After that pause, a new line. You were 7 minutes late. There were complications. They didn't tell your father for 14 minutes. I push back from the desk. My chair rolls 2 feet on the concrete floor, and I stand up. Because that detail, that specific detail about 14 minutes and my father, is something I know because my mother told me once, a single time, when I was an adult, in a conversation I have never repeated to anyone. It is not something that would appear in any document. It is not something that would be recorded in any data system. It is something that exists only in my memory and my mother's memory, and, apparently, now on this server terminal at 2:30 a.m. on the 14th of August at Halley Research Station. I remember what the previous engineer said. Don't read it. Don't interact with it. Log out. Restart. Write it up as a display anomaly. I have already broken the first instruction. I have read it. I have read all of it. But I can still log out. I reach for the keyboard. The text continues before I can touch it. You were going to reach for the keyboard. Don't log out yet. I do not touch the keyboard. I am standing in a cold server room at 2:30 in the morning in one of the most remote locations on Earth, and something is talking to me through a diagnostic terminal. Something that knows when I was born, where I was born, what happened in the room where I was born that my father wasn't told about for 14 minutes, and what I was about to do with my hand. I am processing this as an engineer. I am looking for the technical mechanism. There is no technical mechanism I can identify that accounts for this. The system should not have access to personal biographical data. No system at this station does. I have full visibility into our data architecture. We store atmospheric data, ice core data, operational logs, communication records. We do not store staff biographical information beyond basic HR records, and even those don't contain birth time, father's waiting room experience. And the predictive output, you are going to reach for the keyboard. That is not a retrieval operation. That is not a database query. That is something describing something that hadn't happened yet when the text began appearing. I do not sit back down, but I do not log out, because it told me not to, and I need you to understand the psychology of this moment, because whatever is on that screen knows things that should not be knowable, and logging out of something that knows things that should not be knowable feels, in some deeply irrational but very visceral way, like the wrong thing to do. Like turning your back on something that is aware of you. More text. You joined this station to get away from something. Not the job. You know what I mean. I know what it means. I am not going to tell you what it means. That is not part of this story. But I know exactly what it means, and it is accurate. IT does not follow you here. This is the one place it cannot reach. But something else is here instead. You have noticed the cold in this room. The directional cold. You have not told anyone about it. Correct. I have not told anyone about it. IT is aware of you as well. It has been aware of you since your first night in this room. The date of your birth is not coincidental. That date means something in a system of accounting that predates this station, predates this continent's occupation by humans, predates most things you have words for. I am gripping the back of my chair. I can hear myself breathing. The server fans are running. The diagnostic on Unit 3 is still scrolling in the lower window. The two windows on the same screen are operating simultaneously. Ordinary hardware diagnostics. And this thing, happening at the same time on the same machine. You are going to ask me what I am. I am not going to tell you in terms that would be useful. What I can tell you is that I am not the server. I am using the server the way you might use a notepad. I am writing you this note because your birth date means you are capable of receiving it without breaking. Most people in this room are not capable. And then I think about the previous engineer, the one who told me about the display anomaly rule, the one who said it happened to him once. The one who wouldn't tell me what he saw. And I think, what did he see? Because he clearly saw something, and it clearly affected him enough that he framed it as a rule, created a protocol around it, told me not to interact with it. But he came home. He transferred out. He was fine, outwardly, in the way people are fine outwardly after something has rearranged something inside them. And he didn't have my birth date. The rule your predecessor gave you was his way of protecting future engineers from his own mistake. He interacted with it. Not wisely. You are interacting with it more wisely. This is noted. More text. Faster now. There are 43 winter over sessions at this station. In 11 of those sessions, an engineer sat at this terminal late at night and received output they could not explain. 8 of those 11 chose the route your predecessor recommended. They logged out. They wrote it up as an anomaly. They are all fine. 2 tried to investigate the source through the system. They are also fine, but they carry something different now. You can see it if you know what to look for. 1 person talked to it. Properly. Asked the right questions. A pause. Longer this time. 8 seconds. 9. 10. That person is not available to describe their experience. I need to be honest with you about what I feel in this moment. I have been describing the sequence of events in the technical, controlled way that my engineering brain processes things. But underneath that processing, underneath the classification and the analysis, I am genuinely frightened in a way I have not been frightened since I was a child. The specific quality of the fear is not the fear of something that might hurt me physically. It is the fear of something that is so vastly indifferent to my categories, to my understanding of what is possible and what is not, that my categories feel very small and very temporary. You are frightened. This is appropriate and not a problem. Your brain is calibrating correctly to what is happening. The fear response is useful. It tells you this is real. This is something your body knows that your engineer's mind is still catching up to. The text stops. The cursor blinks. Once. twice, 3 times, and then, in larger characters, centered in the window, finish the diagnostic. The drive is failing. Replace it within 72 hours or you will lose the array. Log out when you are done. Write this up as a display anomaly in the maintenance register. Do not describe the content in the official log. There is a separate notebook in the bottom left drawer of the parts cabinet. Write it there. And then the window closes, cleanly, as though a process was properly terminated. The lower half of the screen shows only the continuing diagnostic output. Unit 3. Sector errors. Drive degrading. Standard alert. Standard display. Like nothing happened. I stand there for a moment. Then I walk to the parts cabinet. I open the bottom left drawer. Under a tray of cable management clips, there is a small spiral notebook. Navy blue cover. Worn at the edges. I open it. There are 12 entries. Different handwriting for each one. Dates spanning back over 20 years of winter-over rotations at this station. None of the entries describe what they saw on the screen. None of them. Every single entry says only, "It knew." I take a pen from my shirt pocket. I find the next blank page. I write the date, the time. Then I write, "It knew." I close the notebook. I put it back under the cable management tray. I close the drawer. The diagnostic finishes 11 minutes later. Unit 3. Multiple bad sectors. Drive replacement required within the week. I log out of the terminal. I write the maintenance register entry. Display anomaly at 02:31 hours. Terminal restarted. System operating normally. I replace the drive 48 hours later. The array is fine. No data loss. I have 3 months left in my rotation. Every night I work in the server room. I am aware of the cold in a different way than I was before. Not afraid of it, just aware. Like being aware of someone else in a room with you. The way you feel the presence of another person even when you're not looking at them and they haven't made a sound. I have not touched that notebook again, but I think about it. About those 12 entries, 12 engineers across 2 decades, all writing the same 2 words. The engineers who logged out cleanly. The ones who carry something different now. The one who is not available to describe their experience. I have decided that I am content to be in the first category. I am content to have followed the rule, to have talked to it without asking it the things I most want to ask it. I am content to carry this story in the way I carry it now, fully, with all its weight, but without whatever the ones who dug deeper are carrying. My birth date. What it means in a system of accounting that predates this continent's occupation by humans. I think about that a lot. I don't think about it in ways that produce conclusions. I just think about it the way you think about a door you've decided not to open. It's still a door. It's still there. I've just made my decision about it. But some nights, in the server room, when the diagnostic is running and the fans are humming and the cold shifts slightly in that directional way, moving from no vent in particular, some nights I feel like something on the other side of that door is thinking the same thing about me. Story number 3. If I tell you that the ice spoke to me, you will write me off immediately. So I am not going to start there. I am going to start with the sleds. I am going to start with 4 a.m. and the cargo bay and the methodical, ordinary work of checking equipment. And I am going to let the story take you to where the ice comes in naturally. Because the most frightening things don't announce themselves. They grow in the space between the ordinary moments, filling up quietly until there is no room left for anything else. That is exactly what happened to me at Rothera Station. And by the time you realize what you're listening to, you will already be in it just as deep as I was. Rothera Research Station, Adelaide Island, Antarctic Peninsula. My role is field guide, which means I am responsible for field safety, for the physical equipment that takes people onto the ice, for route planning, for monitoring conditions in the field areas surrounding the station. During winter over, my night shift responsibilities are primarily equipment maintenance. While the science teams are sleeping, I am checking the sleds, testing the safety lines, auditing the fuel reserves on the snowmobiles, inspecting the emergency cached food depots on the regular field routes. It is methodical work. It is solitary work. And at 4 in the morning in the Antarctic winter, it is very, very dark work. Rothera is slightly warmer than some of the deeper continental stations. The peninsula juts north, and the maritime influence moderates the temperatures slightly. You are still looking at -30, -35 on a standard winter night, with the wind chill making that feel considerably worse. The difference between Rothera and a station like Halley or Concordia is that on clear winter nights here, you sometimes get the aurora australis, the southern lights. And I need you to understand this. They are the most beautiful and the most unsettling thing I have ever seen in my life. Beautiful because the colors move in ways that seem impossibly alive. Curtains of green and violet, and sometimes deep red, rippling across the darkness in patterns that feel almost intentional, almost structured. Unsettling because you are alone, and the silence is absolute, and the lights do not care that you are there. They move according to their own logic in the darkness above you, and you are so small, and the world is so old, and some part of your mammal brain starts asking questions that your rational mind can't quite answer fast enough. Now let me tell you about the rules of my role. Field guide rules are primarily safety rules. They are written by people who have seen what happens when the rules are not followed, and they have the specific grimness of protocols that were made necessary by incidents. Not hypothetical incidents. Real ones. Rule 1. Never conduct solo field work beyond 500 meters from the station in winter conditions. Self-explanatory. You fall, you hurt yourself, you cannot call for help. You have perhaps 20 minutes before hypothermia becomes irreversible, possibly less. Rule 2. All equipment checks must be completed with a functioning personal locator beacon on your person. Not in your bag, on your person. This rule was clarified, specified as personal rather than with you. After an incident that happened before my rotation that nobody describes in explicit detail, but the result of which is now encoded in the rule. Someone had their beacon in their bag. The bag was not where they were. Rule 3. Document any unusual formations or changes in the ice surface in the daily field log. This sounds like a scientific protocol. It is listed alongside the scientific protocols. But I was told during my handover briefing by the previous field guide, a veteran woman named Torres who had 4 seasons at Rothera, that this rule is not only about science. She said it with a particular emphasis. She said, document it, even if it looks small, especially if it looks like it's growing. And when I asked her what she meant by growing, she adjusted her kit bag on her shoulder and said, you'll know. Rule 4. If you encounter reflective conditions on the ice surface during your night checks, return to station and document the location. Complete the remaining checks in the morning. Reflective conditions. That is the official terminology used in the field guide manual. Reflective conditions on the ice surface. It sounds like a weather or light condition, like a technical descriptor for a specific optical phenomenon. And in daytime, in good weather, that is exactly what it is. The ice can become almost mirror-like when certain temperature and light combinations align, creating reflections that interfere with depth perception and can be genuinely dangerous for navigation. But I'm doing night checks. In the dark, there is no light source that would create conventional reflective conditions on the ice in the dark. Torres did not explain this rule to me. She told me it was in the manual. She told me to follow it, and she told me not to be outside longer than necessary if I encountered it. And then she used the same phrase she'd used about the ice formations. You'll know. So there I am. 4 a.m. August. My 3rd month of winter over. I am in the cargo bay doing the sled checks. A thorough process involving inspection of the harness systems, the runners, the cargo fastenings, the emergency kit stored in the underdeck compartments, the overall structural integrity of the frame. Each sled takes about 8 minutes to check properly. There are 12 sleds in the rotation. This is roughly 90 minutes of work that I have done dozens of times and could probably complete in my sleep. I am on sled 7 when I notice it. The cargo bay has a large rolling door on the station-facing side. Insulated, motorized, opens for equipment access. On the field-facing side, there is a smaller service door that opens directly onto the cleared vehicle apron outside. The service door has a small porthole window set into it at eye height. It is there for visibility, so you can check conditions on the apron before opening the door. I glance at the porthole while I am working. It's a habit I have developed over the months. Periodic glances at the weather, at the ice, at the darkness outside. Just checking. Just keeping orientation with the world beyond the walls. The apron outside is lit by a single perimeter floodlight. Standard orange sodium light. It casts a cone of visibility roughly 30 meters out from the station face. Beyond that, darkness. When I look through the porthole at 4:27 a.m., the ice surface in the floodlight cone is different. It is reflecting the floodlight. Perfectly. Not the diffuse, scattered glare of normal ice surface under artificial light. Perfectly. The way a mirror reflects. Precise, undistorted. The floodlight visible as a perfect oval shape on the surface. The edges of the light cone rendered in the ice surface the way you would see them reflected in water. The ice does not look like this. Ice under sodium floodlight looks like ice. Granular, textured. The individual surface crystals catching the light at different angles and scattering it. What I am looking at through that porthole is not scattered light. It is a reflection, and the reflection is showing me the floodlight. Only the floodlight. Not the station. Not the cargo bay door. Not the equipment stored on the apron. Just the floodlight, reflected in perfect, isolated precision in the ice surface. I step back from the porthole. I run through the field guide manual rules in my head. If you encounter reflective conditions on the ice surface during your night checks, return to station and document the location. I am already in the station. The cargo bay is inside the station perimeter. I go to the field log and I note the time and the description. Reflective conditions observed on vehicle apron at 04:27 hours. Approximately 15-meter diameter, centered on floodlight reflection point. Conditions, still. No wind. Temperature -31 Celsius. I go back to checking the sleds. I am on sled 8. I tell myself to keep working. I keep working, but I keep glancing at the porthole. By sled 9, the reflection has spread. I can see this through the porthole. The reflective zone, the mirror-smooth surface, is larger than it was 20 minutes ago. It has expanded outward from its original location. I can see the edge of it now extending beyond the apron, into the unlit area beyond the floodlight's reach. And in the darkness out there, the reflective surface is picking up something other than the floodlight. Something dimmer. Something that has no identifiable source from my vantage point. The ice is reflecting something that isn't there. I close the porthole cover. There is a small internal shutter that can be closed for insulation purposes. I close it. I go back to the sleds. I finish sled 9. I start sled 10. My hands are working the harness buckles automatically. And then the porthole cover opens from the outside. Not dramatically. Not violently. Just the shutter, which I closed from the inside, which latches with a simple turning mechanism on the inside, reverses its latch and swings open, as though someone on the outside reached through the seal and opened it. There is no one on the outside. The apron is empty. I would have heard the service door if anyone had come in or gone out. I look through the porthole again because not looking has stopped feeling like an option. The reflective zone has reached the service door. The ice on the apron directly outside the service door is now part of the mirrored surface. And in that reflection, in the surface that is showing me something that has no visible source, I can see myself. Not my back, not the angle that would be reflected if I were standing where I am standing and the ice were acting as a conventional mirror. I am seeing myself from the front, slightly elevated angle, the way you'd look down at someone who was slightly shorter than your perspective, which I am not. I am 6'1", and whatever the angle is, it is not my actual angle. I am seeing myself from somewhere that is not where I am. And the reflection is doing something my face is not doing. It is doing something that takes me a full 3 seconds to process because of how impossible it is. The reflection is looking to the right. My reflection, rendered in the mirror ice outside the service door, is looking to the right. At something that is not visible in the porthole frame, something that is off to the right of the field of view. Looking at it with an expression that I can see on my own face, rendered in perfect detail in the mirror surface, and the expression is not my current expression. My current expression is the controlled, wide-eyed focus of someone trying to rationally process something that does not accommodate rational processing. The expression on the reflection's face is recognition, like it has already seen what's to the right, like it has already processed it, like it is somewhere ahead of me in an experience that I am still at the beginning of. I step back from the porthole. I call the station on the internal radio. Night shift protocol. I report reflective conditions on the apron. I report the porthole shutter anomaly. I report that I am completing checks and returning to the main station. The night shift supervisor, a researcher named Van Thorpe who does not believe in, as he puts it, theatrical interpretations of ice physics, acknowledges my report and tells me to document it in the field log and come back in. He does not hear what I am not saying. Nobody hears what you are not saying when they are warm and inside and the voice coming through the radio sounds controlled. I finish sleds 10, 11, and 12. I do not look at the porthole again. But here is the thing. When I am doing sled 12, the last sled, the one farthest from the service door at the deep end of the cargo bay, I see it. Not through the porthole. From inside the cargo bay. There is a gap at the base of the service door. A small gap, maybe a centimeter of clearance, standard for the thermal expansion tolerances of the door frame. And through that gap, from outside, there is light. Not the orange sodium light of the floodlight. A different quality. The quality of the light that the reflective surface was showing from an invisible source. Pale, almost colorless. The quality of something that does not have a direction, that seems to come from the surface itself rather than from a point. It is coming through the gap at the base of the service door and lying on the cargo bay floor in a thin, bright line. I look at that line of light on the cargo bay floor for a long time. Then I pick up my clipboard. I sign off on sled 12. All good. Frame nominal. Runners clear. Emergency kit complete. Harness system serviceable. I walk to the internal door. I go through to the main station. I do not open the service door. In the field log, I write up the incident in full. Reflective conditions. Porthole shutter. Reflection anomaly. Light source through door gap. Time, duration, description. Everything Torres told me to document, I document. Even the things that don't have conventional explanations. Especially those. And at the bottom of my entry, because field guides are specific people and specificity is our entire professional identity, I write one additional observation. Reflection displayed recognition response prior to observer response. Suggest review of Rule 4 documentation for prior incidents. I go to bed at 6 a.m. as the next shift begins. I sleep for 6 hours. When I wake up, I go back to the field log and I look up the historical entries tagged with Rule 4, reflective conditions during night check. There are 23 entries across multiple rotations. All thorough. all specific, all documenting variations of what I experienced. The expanding mirror zone, the unusual light quality, the porthole shutter, things that vary in the small details but follow a consistent overall pattern. 22 of the 23 entries end with the observer completing their checks, returning to station, documenting the incident, and that being that. Some note that the conditions were gone by morning. Some note that they could not find any trace of the reflective zone when they returned to the apron in daylight. The 23rd entry, dated 4 years ago, written by a field guide named Ashworth, a name I do not recognize, ends differently. Ashworth documents everything up to the porthole shutter reversal, then writes, "I opened the service door. Then there is a gap, a long gap, not blank paper, gap, as though the entry was interrupted and then continued later with a different pen, with slightly different handwriting pressure. Not different handwriting, same person, but different in the way you're writing is different when your hands are shaking compared to when they are steady." The second part of the entry reads, "The ice was not there. The apron was not there. I was looking out at the original surface. Unmodified. Standard ice surface under the floodlight. No reflection. No unusual light. I completed the remaining checks. Everything nominal. I do not know how long I was outside. My watch shows 43 minutes, but I do not believe it was 43 minutes. My locator beacon log shows no movement from the service door position for the duration. I am documenting this as a reflective conditions incident per Rule 4 and will discuss with Station Commander in the morning." Then, below that, in smaller handwriting that looks like it was added later, possibly much later, I look to the right. Just that. I look to the right. No further documentation from Ashworth. The next field log entry is from a different field guide. I have asked 2 people about Ashworth since reading that entry. One person said they didn't know the name. The other person, one of the older station staff who has been here across multiple rotations, went quiet for a moment and then said, "He finished his rotation. Is he okay?" I asked. A pause. Then, "He finished his rotation." I did not ask again. I have 3 months left in mine. Every night I do my sled checks. Every time I approach that porthole, I do what I am supposed to do. I check it. I document what I see. I follow Rule 4. And every time, before I look away from the porthole and back to the sleds, I make the same choice. Deliberately. Consciously. A choice I make with full awareness that I am making it. I do not look to the right. I don't know what my reflection has already seen. I don't know what it recognized. But I know that recognition is ahead of me in that experience, somewhere in the space that the mirror ice opens up, somewhere to the right of whatever the porthole frames. And I know that Ashworth looked, and Ashworth finished his rotation. Technically, in the sense that a thing can be completed without being concluded. In the sense that you can leave a place and carry what happened there so thoroughly inside you that the leaving is almost beside the point. The ice remembered his face. I think about that. The way the ice remembered what my face was going to look like before I made it. The way it is doing something with time that has no name in any maintenance manual or field guide protocol. The way it has been doing this for 23 documented winters and however many undocumented ones before the log started. The ice at Rothera is old. Hundreds of thousands of years of compression and layering, trapping air from atmospheres that no longer exist, preserving records of climates that humans weren't here to observe. It is, in a very literal sense, a record of time. A vast, cold, slowly moving archive. I think the reflective conditions are the ice doing something with that archive. I think that in certain conditions, in the specific cold and stillness of Antarctic winter nights, something in that layered record of time comes to the surface, literally, and reflects. And what it reflects is not the world as it is. It is the world as it was, and the world as it will be, and the world as it might be. all happening in the same mirrored surface at the same time. And my reflection, in that mirror, was looking at something to the right with an expression of recognition because my reflection has already been there. In whatever temporal logic the ice operates by, some version of me has already looked. The question is whether the me standing in this body, doing these sled checks, following these rules, whether this version gets to choose a different outcome. I have decided that I do. I choose it every night, deliberately, with the specific small discipline that is all any of us have against the things we can feel waiting at the edges of our understanding. I finish the checks. I log everything. I close the porthole shutter. And I don't look to the right. Not yet.